So welcome everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Olivia. So I'm Chris Fuller. I work with South Central CSU Commissioning Support Unit, supporting NHS England on their procurement services across the south of England, amongst other things. And so what we're looking to work through today is really the sort of how to engage and how to work with providers to develop alliances, to develop understandings of what is required and how to get it, really. So we're going to go through to begin with really just our approach to engagement, understanding whether we can or whether we can't and what the regulatory issues are surrounding that. Making sure that it's done on a platform of understanding and solid planning. Look to why to engage in certain issues and what you can get out of it, and how can you make sure that the evaluation and the market engagement stage can flow into a procurement selection phase, or just working with other providers through those sort of issues. So Mike's going to work through a lot of the issues around that, but also we'll be doing a little bit of participation work as well. So do they need to go into Menti now, Mike, to start looking at that?
Can do, doesn't hurt. Yeah, if you wanna go to just www.menti.com is at the top there, and input code .28916177, which is also at the top there, and that will get you to a place you need to be, or you may want to be, to answer a question in a few moments' time. So you can go to menti.com and put that 8-digit code in now if you want to. Yep.
And we see this very much as a participation event as well. I know it's only an hour, but we're really quite keen that although we will be sharing our views with you, we also know that probably a lot of people on the call are really quite experienced commissioners, procurement staff, and again, we're really keen to hear your views on how you may have done things, or any questions you might have about the information that we share. But as we go through this, we'll be looking at, again, what sort of market engagements events can meet your needs, and what would be the best way around that, and really just sequencing to make these things happen. So without actually sort of duplicating a lot of the works we're going through, Mike, should we go to the next slide and you want to pick up on that?
Yep. So hang on. There we go. So approach to engagement. So straight away, if you want to, and I'm showing my screen, so I can't see anyone's face for any kind of non-verbal hands up, and I can't see anyone's screens or anything in terms of the little emoji hands up. But it's as Chris said a second ago there. Please do. I'm happy to be interrupted. So please do interrupt away if you so wish. But head over to www.menti.com right now, please, and that code 28916177, and there should be a poll, hopefully, of a couple of options of some kind of different types of engagement that are allowed. Has come up. So if you want to, and you can choose multiple options there. So let's see if we're getting some answers in. There we are. So what sort of engagement allowed? Looks like that's a final. Oh. So I thought I would just put, of course I could have put a huge number of options on here, but we decided to go with just a few. One-to-one engagement with the incumbent, one-to-one engagement with other potential providers. When we say one-to-one engagement, I say kind of direct closed engagement. Then the third, similar, closed engagement just with a particular set of providers, and completely open engagement. And it's interesting that we've actually got the second most allowed engagement here is one-to-one engagement with the incumbent, because the answer is that actually absolutely all of these are allowed within a certain context and within certain boundaries and within certain rules. And that's where I'm, not for too long, because I know rules and boundaries and that kind of stuff might not be too interesting, or what you're after too much, but it is important framing. But are you allowed to engage in any of those ways? Absolutely yes. So to get it out of the way, we do need to think about the context of the law just quickly, and the public contracts regulations, and just to be very, very clear, that you absolutely can, and the italic text is the law. It's not a paraphrase. It's not something that I've written. It is straight from the law. Contracting authorities may conduct market consultations with a view to informing the procurement, and they may, for example, seek or accept advice from independent experts or authorities, or from market participants. So you absolutely can do market consultations. You absolutely can do those with market participants, and that advice, the final italic wording, that advice absolutely can be used in the planning and conduct of the procurement, procedure, providing only, and this is critical, providing only that it doesn't have the effect of distorting the competition and doesn't result in the violation of the principles of non-discrimination and equal treatment. So yes, we need to be cognizant of making sure we're non-discriminatory, we're transparent, and we treat everyone, or we don't create any inequity of treatment. But absolutely, one-to-one conversations are not inherently invalid. So making sure you do it properly and appropriately. And some of the ways you can make sure you do it properly and appropriately. Just a couple of examples. And just to say that what's critical when you're engaging with a market, doing any kind of market engagement, is your audit trail. So making sure that you're very clear in your audit trail exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and who you're going to do it with, and clarity that doesn't create any kind of distortion or inequity of treatment. And in the most complex of cases or examples, you might even look to use agreements or documents such as I've flashed up on the screen here. The right-hand one being an ethical rules agreement. Ethical rules being where you, in the title really, put a specific and very clear separation between different staff within an organization, so that one group or set of staff are on one side of your ethical wall that might be supporting engagement, and another set of staff are on the other side of the ethical wall that might actually be bidding for something. Now, I don't mean to start this in terms of, oh my gosh, yes, I can technically do all these types of market engagement, but actually I need to get a great big ethical rules agreement in place. But it's just to make sure that if you do some big market engagement, and it might involve one-to-one conversations with an incumbent or one-to-one conversations with a specific group of providers, but you've maybe even just sought advice from someone internally, from someone in governance or someone in procurement, of whether these documents or something like them might be sensible. Or you can at least just take the principles from these documents. For example, you might not need a whole ethical rules agreement, but you might take some principles from it, which are that you need to be really clear, or you want your incumbent, if you're going to engage with them, you want them to be really clear who has access to particular areas of their shared drive, and to confirm that to you. You want them to be really clear who has access or is on invites or has access to calendars for particular meetings, and confirm that to you. So that if you get challenged, small c challenge, rather than maybe some kind of formal challenge, but you can say straight away to anyone that's aggrieved or that says, hang on, how did you engage with Mike Pingstone Limited, and also then let Mike Pingstone Limited bid? You can say, well, we took all of these appropriate protections by making sure shared drives, blah blah blah, etc. So that's for cautious or caution bit out of the way. But in terms of engagement, then it's, and I know this might be teaching to suck eggs, but it's important to, or rather, it's interesting to think about, or amazing to think about, how often this isn't properly or thoroughly, these things aren't properly or thoroughly considered at the outset, because we say, okay, we've got to do some market engagement, let's storm into it. Let's do the event planner, let's book the hall or whatever it is, and let's do an engagement event, without, and particularly where we're talking about VCSE, voluntary community social. Actually, sorry, was someone going to ask a question there? That's fine. It's important.
I think someone needs to go on mute, I think.
Thanks. It's important to start off by stepping back and really asking the question, what do you want from your market engagement? And these are all bullet points. Obviously, identify providers who can meet local needs. Of course, are you actively looking to encourage new market entrants? Because that will affect your entry into market engagement. It will affect your market engagement documentation, how wide-ranging it is. Are you looking to create an environment where organizations can develop partnerships? Again, that will affect the type of engagement you do. Things like speed dating, perhaps what I'll come on to later. Are you looking to collect market intelligence or stimulate market interest? Collect market intelligence, again, will affect the way that you do your market engagement. Might mean you're looking for more quantitative information, a kind of market engagement questionnaires, that kind of thing, but you can do through kind of a procurement portal, even if it's not a formal procurement. And then for the commissioners to brief us, like warming up the market, seek provider views on unconfirmed issues, seek market acceptance of potentially agreed issues, test providers, service models, ideas, and finally, to support statutory requirements and good governance. So mustn't forget that when we're commissioning, whether it be competitively or otherwise, some services, you'll have statutory obligations around engagement. And the particular clause of the NHS Act has just slipped my mind, but Chris might chip in and remember it, or he might not.
It's there's two. It's 14Z and 13Q. 13Q in the NHS Act and 14Z in the Health Service Act.
And those are about making sure that you engage appropriately and proportionately, aren't they, Chris?
Absolutely, yes.
So you do also have some statutory requirements around engagement. In terms of actually planning and executing, I'm gonna unshare my screen for a second, ask you to jump back to Menti in just a moment. I'll just set it up for the next question. Bear with me a second. So bear with me. And hopefully it has moved to the next slide on Menti, which is what forms of engagement have you done? Can anyone confirm to me that it has done that?
Yes, mate.
Okay, so I've left this open-ended. I haven't given you any options, but I'm just interested to understand what are any different types of forms of engagement anyone has done. So from basic briefing event to, I don't want to say anything else, because I wonder what people might come up with, or we might just get 30 people saying briefing event. But I will reshare my screen. and nothing's come up so far. I'm assuming. Oh, ours is starting to come in. Oh, it's because they're longer form answers, so it takes a while, or no one's keen on saying anything. Give it a minute. Or maybe only 3 people have ever done market engagement.
Mine's dropped the code. Can you put the code back up on the screen?
It's at the top of the screen now, 28916177. If I'm sharing, or am I sharing?
No.
You're not sharing at the moment.
You're not sharing, but the link is in the chat, and it should be the same link.
I'm resharing, so it's at the top of the screen now. Give it one more moment. So, what have we got? So, reaching out to local providers in the area, soft engagement. Yes. Actually, we think about market engagement as being, an event or something similar. But absolutely, engagement it can just be a conversation, an email. It doesn't have to be anything formal. Questionnaires. I'm looking rightward. Questionnaires, market engagement events, insight questionnaires, feedback on specifications, service model development, yes. Briefing sessions, pre-procurement, market engagement through formal invites to providers, one-to-one with incumbents and potential new entrants, so one-to-ones, and then market engagement surveys again, and open market. So there's probably about 3 or 4 types of engagement there. There's soft engagement, questionnaires, engagement events, and one-to-ones, whether they be with incumbents or potential new entrants, and potentially for things like service model development, and that kind of thing. So there's loads of different ways that you can engage with the market. And I've gone on the wrong slide. Apologies. It was meant to be this slide next. So I'll do this slide. I'll do this slide and then go back to the last slide. Because following on from different types of market engagement, I will come on to those 6 types of market engagement that we've got there in just a second. What I wanted to talk about first, actually, was communication method. Before we talk about the types of engagement, because communication method into the engagement is just as vital, possibly even more vital than the engagement itself. Because if you don't use the right communication method, then you're not going to have good attendance, good representation at the engagement event, or whatever you choose to do. And this is particularly the case, and we think where we might be seeking to engage with really small VCSE organizations. I've personally been I've gone on a journey is too much, but I can't think of a different word. Gone on a bit of a journey in terms of recognizing and understand actually just how critical the communication method is for some small organizations. I remember going through a very large engagement piece with a whole bunch, loads and loads and loads of VCS organizations, and the communication method was the e-procurement portal that the organization used at the time, and that seemed extremely straightforward to me. This e-procurement portal, it took a minute to log on, to register on the portal, and then you just very simply had to navigate to the to express interest in the market engagement, and then to send messages through the procurement portal. Again, it was just a very simple case of using the correspondence function. So you could do it in literally 5 minutes. You could be registered on the portal, and then you could express interest in whatever the event was, and then you could be ready to attend the event, which is in a week, 2 weeks hence. But I was amazed at the number of organisations for which actually that registering on an e-procurement portal was a real hurdle. And they needed a fair amount of support to take that step, to register their organisation, to take that step to understand where the correspondence function was within the procurement portal. In terms of using a portal, a defined portal for our marketing engagement, rather than try and do all of this with 100 VCS organizations by email. Actually, what it told us was we vastly underestimated the amount of support but certain much smaller organizations might need for something for us that use email and various systems, be it e-procurement system or any other system that we use day in, day out. For us, that was second nature, but for quite a lot of people, it isn't at all. So it's about making sure that whatever communication method you use, that you don't think of it in terms of your skill set and your kind of knowledge base in using those systems. You think about it in your market's knowledge base and skill set, and give the appropriate training, give the appropriate guidance, even if it's very straightforward. Give the appropriate support in the communication method. And then the six boxes. I think we didn't cover. Of course, we covered questionnaires. The questionnaires are a really useful and simple way of getting a load of quantitative data, or asking questions that actually you're going to really struggle to get responses from about in either an open forum, because providers won't wish to have those kind of discussions in front of each other, or you want really considered responses to. So the kind of thing that a questionnaire might be useful for, and that could be sent out alongside an advert to start the engagement. The kind of thing a questionnaire might be useful for is talking about budget. So you might send out a questionnaire saying, we're considering spending this amount of money on these services. Do you consider that that's affordable? Obviously, that's a very, very blunt question. That might be quite a bit more nuanced, but you'd get no responses to that in an open forum. And you'd also struggle to get considered responses to it verbally at all. It's much better suited to a questionnaire. Briefing events. We all, I think, understand what's meant there by briefing event. That kind of standard market engagement event where you might introduce what you're considering commissioning. A procurement person might talk about what the procurement might look like. A commissioner might talk. Someone from finance might talk. A kind of SRO might talk to give the context, that kind of thing. A kind of standard briefing event that might also have some Q&A. Workshop events. Again, I'm sure we'll understand what's meant by that. It's a bit more interactive. So the kind of things where when we did the Menti, we saw that actually that's better suited to kind of specification development or model development, real interactivity, where you can actually get something out of your event. One-to-one meetings, again, that was mentioned on the Menti as well, but we've done quite a lot of one-to-one meetings, again, for things like specification and model development, where yes, you have to be cautious that you're being fair and transparent and everyone has an opportunity, but actually, as I mentioned a moment ago, in terms of providers not wishing or being willing to have certain conversations in an open forum, for when you're looking to get into detail about model or that kind of thing, you can often get quite a lot more out of a one-to-one meeting rather than an open forum. As I said, you have to be careful that you're giving the same opportunity to everyone. So you can do that on a first come, first served. That is fair. So you could say we have 10 one-to-one meetings available on a first come first served, but you do need to make sure that you're not overwhelmed by that kind of thing. Speed dating is something I didn't see mentioned on the Menti. Haven't got a better name for it than speed dating, really. But it's if you're looking for partnerships to be formed, or not necessarily looking for partnerships to be formed, but you think there might be some benefit in partnerships being formed, or so on a kind of equal basis, or if you're looking for kind of lead organization or organizations, and then kind of subcontracting organizations or kind of associate organizations, then speed dating events can be really useful and beneficial. Either you would do that in that kind of lead associate way, where providers could come to you and sign up to be leads, and they would be sat at their speed dating tables, as it were, as leads, and they wouldn't move. And then organizations that wish to be associates or partners to a bigger lead could then book time slots to speak to each one of those, leads at their table and to try and form those partnerships. Meet and greet events, similar, but more kind of on an equal basis, where organizations again can sign up and can say, you know, I think I bring this to what you're looking to commission. I'd like to kind of have a table or have a stand or have a stall or something, and can actually again form partnerships. So speed dating, meet and greet events, quite similar. Does anyone have any comments on doing any of those types of events, or sort of anything apart from the, like I missed, informal engagement, just speaking, just emailing? Any comments on any of that, on any of these events? If not, I'll move back. It's fine. So moving back to the slide that I jumped over a second ago. It's also vital, as well as choosing the right types of events, that you start the engagement through the right method. So there are three main methods here I've put here of how you can formally start your engagement. And the way that you start your engagement is absolutely critical to making sure you can seamlessly move into provider selection, including through formal competition at the BIC local there, but at the back end. So just to talk to these briefly. First, prime information notice. So a prime information notice, or is the formal name for a notice that goes out either in Contracts Finder or Finder Tender Service portal, that kicks off formal, can kick off formal market engagement, but it doesn't have to be used, or can't rather be used to actually kick off a formal competition. So if you did a prime information notice, the top one, and you wanted to do a subsequent competition, then you would have to send out, after you've done your engagement, an advert, a formal advert. You can't use a prime information notice to start a competition, but you can use it to support, in a soft way, a subsequent direct award decision if no interest is shown in the PIN, in the prime information notice. So, of course, one of the reasons to do market engagement that I didn't put on the previous one of the previous bullet point slides, one of the reasons I didn't put on there was to show that there's no interest. So you might legitimately do market engagement to say, I think there's no market for this, but I'm not actually entirely sure. So I'm going to put out a PIN, and I've approved to myself objectively that there's no market for this, or realize that there is a market for this, and go on and do a commissioning process. So the PIN can be used if there is no interest in your market engagement notice. It can subsequently be used to support that direct award decision. The second one is a type of PIN, a prime information notice as a call for competition. Now, In what I think we're generally talking about commissioning, i.e. Healthcare services. So in healthcare services, you can also do a very specific type of PIN, which acts not only as the start of market engagement, but also acts as the start of a formal competition if you wanted to do one subsequently. And that is a big advantage for healthcare services over a standard PIN, because of course it doesn't need a subsequent advert. You can just roll straight from your market engagement activity into your formal competition with the group of providers that expressed interest in your market engagement activity. You already have your group of organizations there. The second bullet point there, under PIN as a call for competition, does just know that of course, because a PIN as a call for competition does also act as a formal advert, it will likely need considerably more internal approvals to be published than just a standard PIN. A standard PIN doesn't actually commit. It's just about engagement. Whereas a PIN as a call for competition could commit the contracting authority to actually run the competition in the manner that it says so in the PIN. It probably would need quite a bit more approvals. And then informal. So under informal, I've lumped quite a lot of stuff, but the one I've picked out there is direct engagement via, for example, a local VCSE infrastructure partner or some other local network. So particularly with VCSE organisations, I think I'm probably relatively safe to say, in most areas, be we talk about a council area, a local authority area, or an ICB area, or whatever defined area, but within most areas, there are one or more kind of infrastructure organisations that support other VCS or have a particular knowledge of the local VCS market, and it might be that you actually engage through that infrastructure partner, that local third sector partner, rather than formally through a PIN notice or a PIN as a call for competition. So on to a potential approach. And this is a slide from the for those who attended the slide deck we gave a couple of months ago. But it's useful again in terms of market engagement. So this shows a pretty full-blooded piece of engagement, and these 8 boxes actually in the example this was used in an ICB, an ICS in the southwest, this represented probably about 30 meetings, 30 or so engagement meetings. So you kick off with a PIN. A PIN is a call for competition in this context. So a PIN is a call for competition was used here in the light blue box on the left. Always, this started with an opening market engagement event, because we were going through a complex set of engagement activities, which had the purpose here of getting us a suite of service descriptions, one, a alliance or alliances, a formative alliance or alliances that could either deliver the service or compete to deliver the services, 2, and a defined approach at the end of it, whether that be competitive or non-competitive, 3. So we were looking for 3 pretty big outcomes or outputs from this engagement: the service descriptions, the formation of an alliance or alliances, and a defined approach, competitive or collaborative. So we did that through mainly the 3 boxes in the middle, which I say of a light 3 boxes in the middle, which were about 30 events in total. A set of collaborative engagement events to develop service-specific elements for specifications, and we did that over a course of meetings. So there were introductory meetings to talk specifications. There were then one-to-one meetings to talk specifications, and bringing it back at the end to talk final specifications. And we did it in a set of one-to-one sessions with emerging VCSE alliances and their potential partners. And actually, it was interesting, in the purple box in the middle of the one-to-one sessions with emerging VCSE alliances. Actually, I mentioned that one of the purposes of this was to define whether we were going to go collaborative or competitive. And of course, collaborative required really there only to be one VCSE alliance that emerged at the end, whereas competitive would of course mean there was more than one potential alliance. That purple box in the middle, 10 potential VCSE alliances actually asked for one-to-one meetings to start with, which was far more than was anticipated. And when 10 potential VCSE alliances asked for one-to-one meetings, our immediate thinking was, okay, so we've very clearly got a competition at the end of this, because there's clearly a market. However, actually a key benefit of this pre-provider selection market engagement was to support those potential alliances that may have expressed interest in a formal competition without this engagement, to understand exactly what the commissioner was looking for, and in 9 out of those 10 VCSE alliances, potential VCSE alliances, for them to realise that actually they were not able to deliver collaboratively what the commissioner was looking for. So this market engagement had the real benefit of allowing the commissioner with the market to really hone in on what was being looked for, and to really help providers to understand whether that was something that they had the skill set for or not, without having to go through a long and possibly pretty complex procurement with 10 bidders. It went down from 10 to 1 through this market engagement process, which then on the right hand blue box, because we'd gone down from 10 to 1, and because remember we'd done a pin as a call for competition, which means we don't need to do another advert, we could from the end of this work purely collaboratively with a single alliance, and didn't have to do any kind of formal competition, because everyone that could have been in the competition, everyone that had expressed interest in the pin as a call for competition, had self-deselected before the end of the market engagement process. So that was a pretty excellent outcome. Just wrapping up, I haven't looked at how I'm doing. Okay, quarter 2, that's fine. So just wrapping it up, I'm afraid I've got a slide of about 15 bullet points now, but it can't always be helped in terms of just, I thought about maybe putting these bullet points on 2 slides, but that doesn't really help either. So here's just a slide of a load of bullet points. But they're good takeaways for successful market engagement. Of course, know what you want to achieve. Absolutely is always a joint effort between commissioners, stakeholders, and procurement. Stakeholders, as I said right at the start, absolutely can include the market in terms of what that engagement looks like. Tailor the engagement to meet the needs of the project and the market, as I said, as I've already said. Plan and manage communications carefully, as I've already said, in terms of the style of the communications and how those communications actually get to the market. Because, like I say, we use Outlook or any system all day, every day. We're all on Teams now. Teams is, second nature. It absolutely still is not to a good number of people. Provide guidance to participants on the skills and experience of attendees. I'm kind of same as my last point, really. Location, time, venue, and frequency wisely. it's it's amazing how fewer attendees, even on Teams, you'll get at a 9 o'clock engagement event, even as opposed to a 9:30 engagement event or a 10 a.m. engagement event. Prepare, of course. Ensure attendance from your team and choose a strong, effective facilitator. Even more important, through Teams or whatever medium the market engagement happens now. So we could of course still do face-to-face engagement, and there may be times where that is still required, but the clear tendency is towards Teams and other kind of online forums, which makes some of the types of engagement far harder, and we have to make sure that we absolutely nail the administration and the facilitation of the events. Must always be non-discriminatory, transparent, and of course ensure any breakout groups are effectively led and on time, same as my previous point about administration. Retain records of key issues and messages, not just for audit trail, but audit trail is very important, especially if you're doing one-to-one engagements. So if you're doing one-to-one meetings with different providers, whether it's your incumbent or not, a decent audit trail of those one-to-one meetings is absolutely vital to, like I said, if you run into any problems around arguments around lack of transparency or that kind of thing, or equity of treatment, you can point straight to an audit trail and say, no, everything we did was above board. We said broadly the same things to everyone that engaged with us, and we asked them broadly the same questions. Of course, their responses, may have been different, but we asked them broadly the same things. Of course, make sure you actually do something with the output, and actually, like it or not, you absolutely will. We absolutely are judged by providers on the quality of events. It's for lots of providers, it's the first time they'll ever meet the commissioner or the procurement lead or anyone else that's at the event. So don't take market engagement events lightly. Not what I'm sure anyone ever would. Make sure they're run well and at high quality. And as a real whistle stop, that is everything that I've got to say. Right. So how do we want to manage this for 13 minutes? Were there any
let me
questions?
just wrap that up a bit then, if that's okay, Mike.
Sorry.
So thanks for listening, guys. I think well, what I've seen from some of the attendees today, we've got quite a few procurement experts on the call. So what we will say is that what we've described is overarching a general approach to some of the market engagement issues and the nuances that Mike has sort of defined within that. I think from your point of view, it's really important that as and when you have a need for a new service or looking to develop or want to form alliances between organisations, it's talking with your procurement colleagues to find out what you want to achieve, how you want to achieve it, and what you want to get. I think one example I always like to refer to is the Beatles film, The Magical Mystery Tour. And those people of a certain age will understand the reference to that. The Beatles felt that if they simply brought a lot of funny people together, put them on a bus and drive around a bit, funny things will happen. And it was an unmitigating disaster of a film. And that's similar to market engagement. If you just bring people into a room and expect to get the result you want without the planning, without the preparation, without the vision and the strategy, you will struggle a little to get that. It's really important to develop your market engagement strategies to meet the needs, and I think the slide that Mike showed with the arrow on it really explains how well that worked when there was a really clear vision of what wanted to be achieved. So on behalf of all the procurement people on the call, put your heads up, put your hands up and offer support for your people around you to help develop that. And apologies if that's grandmother and egg stuff for you all, but it is important for that, and it will allow us to get to the point where people can work in collaboration. The speed dating thing works really quite well, especially when you want people to work together, which I think was probably what we want to do with them, the VCSE sector particularly, because they're playing a more and more important role in the fabric of our systems, aren't they? And to ensure that they've all got a voice, to ensure that they can work collaboratively with perhaps bigger organisations who may have the infrastructure and architecture to work with us commissioners who are slightly larger organisations as well. That's really quite important. So thanks very much. Are there any queries of what we've said and how you might need to apply that to any of your specific circumstances? We can answer any real-time questions that you might have. This is where I wish Teams had a tumbleweed option that we could sort of pop on to come across there. I know everyone's very bashful, even Paul, who I see has joined us as well.
That's me, Mr. Bashful.
Always. Okay. Olivia, I think Mike, is there anything more on your side that we need to pick up on?
No, not if there's no questions.
Olivia, then just.
It's been
Sorry.
very helpful. I'll just make a noise from this end to show we are all still here. It has been very helpful, and it is a conversation that is going on a lot, particularly about the VCSE involvement and how we engage with them and how we and an awful lot of it is about they're all sensible, reasonable people. They just want to be involved, and they don't. There's no, my pet hate at the moment is getting money, the ICB getting money in July or August. And by December, they decided how to spend it. January, they have a plan. And February, we give the money back because we haven't got time to run a process. There's my pet hate. So anything that can smooth that out and standardize the approach and make it simpler, it wins in my book.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So Olivia, just for you to wrap then.
Okay, thank you. So there's been a few questions about making sure that we share the slides as well as the recording. So we'll take that as an action. And I think we can include the slides from last time. So the next two, next session on contracting. And I think, again, as a response to a previous request, you will just go again through the principles of grants versus contracts. So that's on the 30th of January, 11 till 12. And then depending on how publication of new legislation falls, there might be both a provider selection process or regime that is the latest update. So that's on the 6th of Feb, 2 to 3. And depending on, again, if that hasn't been published, we've got a tentative 22nd of Feb in the diary. So either a slightly longer version on the 6th or two separate sessions. So thank you very much. As I put in the chat, we're trying to build up the resources so that they're all in one place when people want to refer to them. All the different slide decks and recordings will all be there, so that we're building them up. Thank you, and hopefully see you on the 30th.